I'm going to talk with Bas Tadros. Now, Bas is in Western Australia. He's a mindset coach, clinical hypnotherapist, and the author of 3 Steps to Inspiration for Life, which sounds rather wonderful, doesn't it? And tonight, it's a little bit of a surprise, Bas. Before I welcome you, I just want to let you know that I have the honour of telling you that on behalf of the Health Australia Party, that you are officially chosen as our first candidate to run for the Health Australia Party in the West Australian state election next year. So congratulations, Bas.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you, Molly. Thank you. You heard it here first. Is that the go?
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah, and we're very excited to have you on board. And I'm quite confident that with you on board, we can do some really good things.
Thank you, Molly. It's an honour and a privilege to be part of Health Australia Party, and it's definitely a great opportunity to make the difference that I'd like to make. I'll talk to you a bit more about that as we go on here.
Lovely. Thanks, Bas. I'd like to start off, Bas, if we can, by letting our members and our viewers learn a little bit about you. So could you tell me a bit about your background and, where you're living and how you live and what you do? And you've done some marvellous things with your mindset coaching and your books that you've written. Can you tell us your background? Fill us in so we know Bas.
Yeah, sure. I was born in Egypt, and Bas is actually short for Bassem. So Bassem Tadros is my full name, and Bassem in Arabic, it actually means smiley. The word Bassem comes from the word smiley. So I think it's my nature to smile. There has been lots of challenges in life, and one of the best things I've learned is to smile at those challenges as well, to be an unconditional smiler, if you like.
I like that.
Yeah. And, I found that in my mid-20s, I was having a midlife crisis. I didn't know what a midlife crisis was back then, to be honest, and I don't think I referred to it as my midlife crisis either. But, I was in corporate. I worked for a wonderful company that is a Fortune 500 company. It's in the top 5 of the Fortune 500 companies. The company's brilliant, and it gave me plenty of opportunities. But at that point in my life, I was actually at my lowest. I'd had a relationship breakdown. My parents' relationship had broken down. They'd been divorced after 20 years of marriage. The stress at work was getting to me, call that corporate stress. And as a mid-20s something-year-old, I was looking around me going, where are the solutions? Like, what can I do different? And how can I improve my life? How can I get my smile back? Because I definitely wasn't smiling at that time. And it was affecting me so much, all this stress, that I'd actually lost a lot of my confidence. And I found that very hard at the time. I probably didn't talk about it at the time or try and diagnose it. But I found it very hard to even get up in meetings in the corporate workspace that I worked and introduce myself. So if you can imagine, I was in struggle town, big time, and I didn't know who to talk to or who to trust. And I remember one day, because in corporate you get offered, I can't remember exactly the correct terminology, but counseling, EA or EP or whatever. I think different companies have different terms for it. But I went and spoke to a counselor. He could have been a psychologist, for what I remember. And as soon as I started speaking, he cut me off and said, "Where are you from again?" And I said, "What do you mean? What area do I live, or where do I work? What do you mean?" He's like, "Where did you come from?" And I said, "I was born in Egypt." He goes, "Oh, people from your region, from your part of the world, tend to exaggerate." And I remember that it really hurt me. It broke down the spirit or the enthusiasm that got me there to sit down and speak to that guy at that time. And I thought, if this is counseling or psychology, thank you and no thank you. I don't want this service. So I remember walking out of there feeling pretty uncomfortable. But I still had to find my smile. And at the time, I remember thinking, so what do people, and I was thinking as a young man, what do young men do when they're in struggle town, and the things that looked like the options at the time, like A, B, C, and D, were alcohol, drugs, or suicide. And I thought, none of those sound like solutions. They sound like they're bigger problems. So what I did, I started looking at where did all my struggles begin? And I thought maybe my mindset. So if I could change my mindset, I could potentially get a grip on my life and create some better outcomes. So I studied hypnotherapy and NLP, which is neuro-linguistics programming. And to me at the time, that was the biggest shift I could have had in the right direction. And something shifted so much so that when I went back to work, people said to me, not that I took any time off, but it was just after the course, people said, well, you've done something different. What have you done? Have you had a haircut? Have you lost weight? Something was changed. And so people were buying me coffee, booking meeting rooms to just have a talk. And some would talk about their problems at home. Some would talk about their problems at work. And I found this new lease on life where I found my smile. Perhaps that's what had happened. It's the first time, by the way, I've ever referred it to this story with the smile context. So you've brought that out, Molly.
It's a first for everything tonight.
There is. And so I really enjoyed that part of what I was doing, and I started seeing a difference in people's lives after our conversation. So I started to create a plan or a program that came on the basis of this question. The question was, and I just asked myself, I'd said, why didn't I know the things that I know now? Like, why didn't I know what I learned through hypnotherapy and NLP? Why didn't they teach me that at school, the coping mechanisms? Yes. And the answer that came back, it was very swift. It said, if you think this is worthy enough of teaching, go out and teach it. So I created some plans, and, I had a couple of investment properties and mortgage and some other responsibilities. I couldn't just resign. So I made some plans. I put those plans into action. I eventually resigned from the wonderful space that I worked in the corporate space, and started my own practice as a hypnotherapist. And it was around that time I wrote the book, 3 Steps to Inspiration for Life. And my life shifted, within the space of making those decisions, within the time of actually resigning also. I'd met the woman of my dreams. I got married. We've got 2 kids and a 3rd one on the way now.
Beautiful.
I made the shift to move to Perth. And so lots of things happened, all at the right timing and all for the right reasons. And I feel like this time in my life, again, something's shifting. So, we want to talk a little bit about my involvement with Health Australia Party and how I got to know those guys. And I'll share that with you.
Yeah, please, Bass, because I think when you join a political party, for me, the thing I really liked about Health Australia Party was every single policy that I read through, I absolutely agreed with. And I've never been able to do that with any other party that I had looked at. And my own brother was a senator many years ago, so I was quite involved in the Liberal Party, but it never quite sat for me. And Health Australia Party is balanced, and they're careful, and they really want the very, very best for everyone. I really love that about this party, and that's why I stay involved and spend time and want to make a change. So yeah, please tell me why you have chosen Health Australia Party.
Well, like you, it never really sat well with me voting and going to the elections and picking between blue and red. To me, it felt like, it's like football teams. And it also felt very coerced, because a lot of the things that we see on the media is driving us towards one or the other. When one comes in, they override the other one's parties and policies. Sometimes some of those parties and policies are fantastic, and they are helping the community, but the other party can't come in and let that keep going because it shows well for the other party's legacy. And so they override it. And
exactly.
As a young person looking at that, I was like, whose interest are these people acting in? Are they acting in their own interest, or are they acting in their party's interest, or are they acting on behalf of the Australian community's interest? And what happened was, I was always a swing voter. I couldn't really pick one or the other. And it got to the point where I was just looking for the best of the worst of the options that I have. And it's like, who's going to do the least damage? Who's the lesser evil? But to me, that's not what politics is about in the future. And I think the future of politics is decent people that are not career politicians, not people that have been institutionalized, because it's usually those ones that are institutionalized. Um, I call them political hacks. And what happens is they develop the tools and the tricks of the game to play the game to their advantage and to not anybody else's. And I've seen that. I think all of Australia's seen that. It depends on what level of awareness or what level of truth people are willing to admit, because some people are so blinded by the fact that they've got this loyalty for either red or blue, and their loyalty blurs the truth of and the reality of the situation. And
absolutely,
that makes a huge difference. And let's look at it this way. A lot of people think of it of like and dislike. I like that party, I dislike that one. What if we change that for a moment and we looked at it from real and true? So instead of going, I like this one and dislike this one, because maybe the one that you dislike is saying something real, and maybe what they're bringing is something true to the table, and you're really throwing the baby out with the bathwater because you dislike them. And I think that's the change that we need to see in politics. Real people representing people rather than being institutionalized and doing it to your advantage or to whoever's advantage, even the party's advantage, because that doesn't mean the advantage of Australia. It doesn't mean the advantage of the Australian people. And so I don't necessarily love politics, especially the old politics. The future politics I like, because at least it's not about beating each other up, and it's not about trying to point out anybody's flaws in order to make ourselves look better, because I think that game's been played to death. What we need is real leaders that are willing to provide real solutions, and they're willing to admit even when they get it wrong, because I think that's what leadership is about.
Exactly. Yes.
If we're not willing to admit it when we're getting it wrong, then we're potentially not sharing the entire story. So I like Health Australia Party for that reason, the fact that they're real people representing the people's views or the people's best interest, and not their own, and not they're definitely not politicians in the old sense. They're politicians in the future sense, and I think that's what we need. We've seen things happen in our life, like technology disruptions, business disruptions. We've seen businesses that have come out of nowhere that have created businesses of the future. Like, for example, Uber, that don't own cars, but they're the biggest transportation business now in the world. Airbnb, that don't own properties, but they're the biggest for housing, and even represented huge transformations for the hotel industry. And so could Health Australia Party be the political party of the future that comes in without real politicians, that come in with the passion and the enthusiasm and the solution and the leadership that drives an entire new generation of politics? I like that space.
Yeah, I like that very much. And I think one of the things that I've certainly been disillusioned with is what I see as corporate leading our politicians, the corporations that I think seem to govern which way they vote and what they do, because some of the decisions that are made are definitely not in the best interest of you and I or of the people. More for the big boys club, maybe.
And we've seen that largely with, even if we look at just one portion of the corporate side of things, if we look at the mainstream media, it's a big part of the corporations that impact politics, and politics impact that. There's a policy, I think, not that long ago that got passed or got changed, a bill that went through, and it affected media in a large way, because there used to be a rule that you can't have the monopoly of owning a newspaper, radio station, TV station, all in the same territory. And that bill that came through a couple of years ago shifted that and changed that rule to you can do that. And so suddenly people are picking up a newspaper, reading it and hearing and seeing the things that they're seeing and hearing on radio or on TV as well. And it's all in the same mode of propaganda. It's not representing real or true stories, but it's whatever that particular media channel wants to represent. And so that's happening. And that wouldn't have been passed with fair governance. It wouldn't have been done if the persons involved were looking at representing truth for the people and cared about what the people get, and that people have an option to look at different things from different perspectives and make their own choices. So things are shifting, and they've been shifting that way for a long time, and they need to shift back. And one of the things I like about Health Australia Party is they won't accept donations from a corporate entity. It needs to be from a real natural person like you and I. And even then, if it's a big, significant amount, Health Australia Party asks, you know, who are you? What do you want? Why are you contributing this? And they try and ascertain the intentions. And if the intentions are because we want to have a sway, forget it. Thank you very much. Keep your check. But you know, so that's what interested me. I got to know Health Australia Party by interviewing them for community TV. So I was involved in community media for a few years as a TV presenter and reporter. Largely because it's community TV, a lot of that was voluntary. And I really loved it because it gave me an opportunity to interview people from all sorts of walks of life, from a homeless person on the street to a student, to a university professor, to an MP, to a minister, to the governor of WA, to Mark McGowan, to whoever it may have been that I was sitting in front of and interviewing. And it was really cool and interesting to sort of see and hear from different people, from different perspectives. And it shapes you. It shapes how you ask questions and how you interview.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it certainly gives you a good grounding for politics, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So what, given you're now going to be very heavily involved in West Australian politics, do you see any particular issues from the West Australian point of view that you would like to see managed differently?
There's lots of different things. I know there's lots of banners when you drive down towards the ports of, no more livestock exporting and so on. And I've personally felt that even way before getting involved with Health Australia Party, driving past a truck that's heading towards the ports with live animals, sheep, and sometimes you can smell them before you can see them. You feel for them because it's a tough situation. Whether Health Australia Party support a decision to create policies around that or not, that's yet to be determined. I've only just found out with you now that it's official that I'm going to be running as a candidate for the next state elections here in March. And I'm excited about that. And I definitely want to make changes. The changes are not going to be necessarily changes that I personally want to drive. They're going to be something from the team. They're going to be something from Health Australia Party. And you mentioned earlier that they are very considerate and they're very balanced in their views. So there's a lot of things that go in to look at making a policy. And I take a lot of consideration and respect for that. So as someone that's never really had any political aspirations, I'm going to leave it to the people that have an understanding and more experience to help me drive the policies here. I think WA has had lots of struggles with what we had here. I mean, at some stage we were listed very low in the ranking for most livable cities. I think we were 7th or 9th or something like this. I consider that low because of how beautiful this city and state is. And it was because of largely we were looked at as a danger because of the, I think, methamphetamines or the ICE situation that we had here where people were on drugs or there were meth labs and things like that. So that would be something I'd like to sort of see some changes in. Homelessness would be something I'd like to see some changes in. It's completely outrageous in this day and age in 2020 that we have the beautiful country that we have, the beautiful city and state that we have, and we've got homeless people living on the streets. That's got to change.
Couldn't agree more.
I think
Absolutely.
there's somewhere within the vicinity of 2,600 of the population of the people that are on the streets being children under the age of 12. So
Mm,
that, as a father, alarms me, and
yes.
it makes me think, if children are our future, what are those thousands of children, our future, doing on the streets? What could we
Mm,
do more? Again, it'll be something I'd like, the party to support me on and to give me some direction on. But they're the things that come up for me, to answer your question, as passions.
mm, mm.
Um, Definitely more for allied health as well. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, and one of my going jokes, and I'll keep using it until they tell me it's illegal is to unhypnotize people. Um,
Right. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
yes, maybe we've all been a little bit hypnotized by what's going on in the media and what's going on, and sometimes it's a distraction to what's really going on. I've definitely seen people getting sick,
Mm,
and literally, from watching the news, because of the fear and the stress and the anxieties that creates. And so, it's time we look at the regulations and
mm,
hold people accountable, hold the media accountable for representing and sharing truth, and not, I'm not holding my tongue on this one. I want to soften things and be balanced about certain things. And there's some things that we've got to say as it is. People really do need to start to, I know we're very low key in Australia, and she'll be right. And it takes a
mm,
lot to get us all worked up. But people get more worked up about their football team losing than they care about what's going on in reality in our country, and what's
mhm,
starting to shape our policies. Um,
mm.
we're starting to see some political maneuvers in this territory. So I've seen a petition that was done by Kevin Rudd about the monopolization of the Murdoch media. And I salute Kevin Rudd for that. And I'm sure there's going to be people that are for that and against that. Maybe he has his own different
Always.
agenda,
Yes.
you know.
Mm, mm,
And but what I'm seeing is he's probably got a point as well. Like, and nothing against Murdoch or the Murdoch media, but it's more about, do we want fairness for Australians, or do we all want to be brainwashed by the same stuff? And
mm.
and that's what we've got to be unhypnotized from.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I always think a really good example of people being hypnotized, or hypnotic words being used, is the toilet paper saga.
Oh my God.
One official spoke out and said, we might be coming in for lockdowns. You might have to stay at home for 2 weeks. Make sure you've got some supplies and toilet paper. That was his last word. And everybody frantically runs out for toilet paper. And I
We've
would go
seen it.
around the supermarkets. I'd look at the shelves, and the toilet paper would be gone, but there'd still be tins of baked beans and salmon and tuna and, essentials that you need to live, but there'd be no toilet paper.
Yep.
So words are very powerful, and the media does have a lot to answer for. That's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's to the level of how much you watch and listen to that media, is to the level of degree of how brainwashed someone really might be. The people that went and acted on that frenzy of hoardism and hoarding toilet papers caused the disruption to that whole industry and to the logistics of it, because the whole supply chain was affected by that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it didn't make any sense. And I can, like, hand on heart, we made a decision, my wife and I, not to buy any toilet paper during that time, because we said we've got enough rolls. We may have already bought a pack of whatever, 20 or 18 or whatever they come in. How long will that last us? A few months? And we said, well, we're not going to go out and buy toilet paper during this time. It was like our own little strike. And if we run out, you know what? I'll come up with a solution. Maybe we can have more showers.
Well, toilet paper hasn't always been around, has it?
That's right. And no one's going to die with the shortage of toilet paper, but it's the mindset and that
Yes.
frenzy and the mentality that people have. And I can guarantee you that some of those hoarders still have a garage or a shed full of toilet paper that's probably going to get destroyed with the weather before they even get to use it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure of that. Yeah.
Unless they're planning to sell it, I'm not sure, or maybe they're very kind-hearted people. They've gone out and bought all that toilet paste so they can give it away to their neighbors in case they have a shortage.
Well, you never know.
You never know. I don't judge the book by its
You
cover.
never know. Yeah.
You never know. But you're right, and that is exactly the mentality that kind of panic creates. So, from early on, we would have seen with what was happening with the situation globally, that there was announcements that were so driven from fear and panic, and people were getting unwell because of that fear and panic before they even get any contraction of the virus, before the virus even made an entry into our territory or country. And that's a big thing. That is a huge thing for where media needs to be held accountable for what they report and how they report it. Rather than creating the circus that they've created, they could definitely do better. And there's no doubt that the media will also look at ways to put Health Australia Party down, just because we're different, just because we're new, just because, we're not that new. We've been around since 2015, but there'll always be something that they'll go, these guys, don't worry about them. Look this way,
Well, yeah, we're for natural health and allowing natural therapies to blossom. And of course, that goes against the grain for big farmer, or what does Isaac call them? The pharma cartel, the drug cartels. And they don't like natural therapies because they can't patent our products, herbs and vitamins and homeopathics, which work amazingly well. Yet, they're not, doctors aren't allowed to use these things. And they're really not. We live in a village. I'll just tell a quick story. We live in a little village, and there was a new medical centre built. So my husband and I trotted down, and a female doctor, an Indian woman, excuse me, went in, and I said, look, I'm just here for a checkup, and I'm getting on in years, so I better have a checkup. I hardly ever see the doctor. But I said, I'm a herbalist and I love homeopathy. And she said, I love homeopathy. So I thought, oh, wow, this is awesome. A GP who loves homeopathy. She said, yeah, she said, my mother had a problem with her arm for 7 years, and the medical profession could do nothing. And she tried everything. And then we took her to a homeopath, and within a couple of months, she was totally okay. So she said, I really like homeopathy. So I said to her, oh, good. So you use homeopathy? Oh, no, she said, I'm not allowed to use homeopathy. I can't use it in my practice. So I thought, well, hang on. Really, something's wrong with this picture, because here's a doctor, and doctors, maybe they need to stand up a little bit, because these doctors, they know the value. And worldwide, doctors in Europe and particularly India use homeopathy and herbal medicine all the time. But, these doctors are so, I think, scared of the repercussions if they dare to use any of these therapies. And certainly the integrative doctors get a bit of a beating every now and again as well.
Yeah. Well, look, homeopathy and Ayurveda and other practices have been used for thousands of years, especially in countries like India. So they do know the benefits of them. That's another thing that we need to look at here in Australia, is the gag orders against doctors for speaking it out. They're huge. It's
is it?
It's really it's out there with the whole burning of the books thing. So we got to be liberal with freedom of speech and
Yes.
honest about some of these things. And yes, I've heard of doctors, some of friends that have, it's their livelihood, and they're afraid to speak out about some of the things that they see, because they're afraid that they will lose their license to practice. And and rightly so. But the issue is, we need to look at these policies. Who put these laws in place for doctors?
Yes.
If doctors are scientists, then a true scientist is always out there looking for the efficacy of something and the benefit of something. And if it doesn't have that efficacy or that benefit, then why do it? Why use it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I think there's a huge issue again, and it comes from that corporate influence. And big pharma is a big corporate; it's billions of dollars, a year kind of industry,
Mm,
and
mm,
and banks are a big influence to governance and government. So we need to look at these things, and we need to establish a fairness. If it was up to me to bring in a new policy in Australia, it would be a policy of fair and transparent donations to parties, to all parties. So if someone's donating any amount, small or large, because I think to get around that at some point, they introduced something along what I'm talking about here. So what I'm talking about isn't a pioneering idea, but what they did is they said over a certain amount. So then it doesn't stop people donating under that amount and making that a daily thing or every
mm,
5 minutes or whatever it may be, or a weekly thing.
mm,
And then that totals up and adds to a whole new picture. And we don't see it because that rule kind of blurs the truth.
mm.
So
Yeah.
we need honesty, we need transparency, especially in governance and in leadership. And if we've got that level of honesty and transparency, then we can make better decisions. We can make we can hold people accountable as well. We can hold ourselves accountable, which
Exactly.
which
Yes.
is
And we
important.
need that. Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And then another one would be that doctors don't get into trouble for speaking the truth. If they see that a certain drug or a certain medicine or a certain anything is causing more effect than benefit, they should get rewarded for speaking out about it because it's saving
mm.
lives, not punished.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
That first do no harm. They need to remember that, I think.
Yeah, that's right. It's a Hippocratic oath, not hypocrisy oath,
Hypocritic.
not hypocritic.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We need a lot of change, I think. And
I agree.
we need, you're right, we need people in politics who are free to be able to speak up because they're not bought by any particular corporation or ideal from certain people or corporates. So yeah, transparency, freedom of voice, freedom of speech, which is being taken away at a great rate of knots at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy what's going on around the world at the moment. We've got a US election, and we've got social media outlets saying that they're going to do another gag on the president. You know, I think first it started with um, Twitter senior officials and people like that saying, "Yeah, we need to silence him," and then shortly after, I think it was on Nine News or something, I read it where he was silenced. And I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that to someone? Anyone. It doesn't matter who the person is, whether they're liked or disliked, whether they're vocal or they're not vocal. Um, just how does that work? I don't understand that.
Yeah,
Um,
something wrong with that picture, isn't there?
Totally. And why aren't people asking more about these kind of things and trying to figure out who benefits when we silence someone? How does that affect freedom of speech? What does that represent to people's freedom when you silence them? Is that a nice thing to do? Is it the right thing to do? Is it a kind thing to do? Um, again, there is definitely something wrong with that picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You need to ask who benefits, or as they say, follow the money, I guess, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
And the same thing could be said about when we're gagging doctors from speaking up about things. Who benefits? How does that work? Threatening them with $10,000 fines or imprisonment or losing their doctor's license. How does that encourage that we continue to improve the system versus, again, silencing and gagging? And it really, in 2020, I think we should be more evolved than that, if I could use the should word, but we could be more evolved than that. We can certainly improve our game. And we're not going to improve our game by silencing and gagging people. And the only way we'll do it is to hold people accountable, to be honest and transparent, and to say it as it is, or share what's going on for real, and let people make decisions and choices based on that.
Mm.
Trying to protect. Yeah.
Choice is a big thing, isn't it? People really, we're not silly, you know. We know what's best for us, for ourselves, and I certainly think people need to have all the information, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then they can make a choice that's right for them, which may be very different to a choice I would make.
Yeah, I totally agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree, Molly. And I operate from that policy myself, and from that place that I trust it, you know, even the justice system, it says basically it's innocent until proven guilty, right? And I trust that people are more intelligent and smart enough to do the right thing than thinking that they're stupid and they have to be told what to do. The biggest surprise I've had during the 2020 surprises is some of the most intelligent people I know have vocally said, no, we shouldn't trust people. And yes, we should enforce certain things that take away people's rights, because people wouldn't know what to do with them. And that really shocked me. It really surprised me, because that's the level and the degree of brainwash people have had. And I want to make it so simple that when I say I trust, as a parent, I trust my children to do the right thing. I operate from a place that I'm raising decent human beings, new human beings. They're still young, very young. You know, I've got 2 under 5, but I trust that they're going to do the right thing, and I operate from that place. And more often than not, they do the right thing. And even when they don't, I go, well, they're under 5 and they need some guidance. And by that way, I'm reinforcing their own, you know, intelligence and their own leadership qualities, not taking it away from them. And so to see government do that in other places like Sweden and Switzerland and other places, I've really saluted those places, because they've obviously given people the freedom to do the right thing with the trust that they know what's good for them. If they're not feeling well, they're obviously not going to go out. But you know, it's fundamentals. But to operate where we have operated here from a different space, I think that's something that could change for the better. And you know, I was speaking to a very intelligent gentleman who has got a PhD in analytical chemistry, and he's also spent a lifetime in risk management and risk mitigation. And he said, you know, trying to do what's been done here by the Australian government doesn't produce a level of risk mitigation. Risk mitigation would have been, who's at risk? Oh, it's the elderly. They need more support. They need more nursing. They need more care. Fantastic. Everything else needs to continue to some level of normality. But blanket lockdowns and closing things down is like saying we've got people dying on the roads, 200 people a year, so we've got to take everybody off the road. No one's allowed to drive. Rather than, you know, risk mitigating, going, oh, who are the people that are at risk? Is it people not wearing seat belts, or are they drink driving, or are they on high speed highways? And is it a particular area where that's happening? Is it an intersection? That's risk mitigation, trying to find out what's going on and risk mitigating it to the largest degree, rather than blanket anything. And I'm sure everybody would have been up in arms if we had a policy introduced of no one's allowed to drive anymore, you know.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, because it hasn't made real sense the way this whole thing has been handled in terms of dealing with an outbreak of infection. You isolate the vulnerable, and the rest of the world goes on its way, and you don't break down economies and have a suicide rate escalating. And it's
there's a lot
in
of
my
other
opinion
risks.
it's not handled well.
Spot on. I mean, that's things that are going to come out in the whitewash. They're things that we'll find out a lot more about later. At the moment, the media hasn't been sharing any of that information about the people that have healthy, perfectly well people, but just because of the lockdowns and the perhaps not having the right coping tools, have gone down, you know, the sad statistics of suicide. We already have a high suicide per capita in Australia. That's another big area that's very close to my heart, because I'm very much pro-life. Even in the title of my book, 3 Steps to Inspiration for Life, I would have loved to say 3 Steps to Inspiration pro-life, you know, but for life made sense because it played on both sides of that, the inspiration for life as well as pro-life. And so that is a topic that's of interest to me. Another one, obviously, that we won't hear about is the statistics of family breakdowns and domestic violence and the things that have happened as a result of this blanket rules that have been applied. And these are things that could have been avoidable.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and did it exasperate the inevitable for some of the maybe relationship breakdowns? Potentially. But did it have to be that way? Not at all. You know, the kids that are going to be traumatized from those experiences, the families, there's a lot of things that haven't been equated yet. And again, it'll come out in the whitewash later on. Also, looking at the statistics with this analyst, another really interesting thing that he said is people seem to be living longer. So life expectancy has gone up compared to last year. Men that were on average living up to 80, they're now living up to 82. Women that were living up to 82, they're now living up to 84. And what that could do is also explain some of the statistics of the people that didn't die last year that were supposed to have died in 2019 because of preconditions like cancer or other sicknesses that they had. They lived longer. And so they've lived into 2020 and they've showed up on the numbers of the so-called deaths that we're seeing in the statistics and the numbers. And the danger with statistics, it can be used either way. So
correct. Yes. Yeah.
If we look at that life expectancy, if we're looking at full picture rather than half pictures and you know, turning things to suit the narrative that certain people wanted, that will represent a whole new different level of truth. We're not on a fact-finding mission. I guess as part of Health Australia, it's going to be more about what can we do to help our communities, and what can we do to do things differently for the better. Not differently for the sake of difference. I'm not really interested in recreating the wheel, but it's more about the difference of what difference can we make? How can we make a difference to people's lives? How can we add to the quality of people's lives? I think that's what's important. I love the 5 pillars that Health Australia Party represents. I also love the foundation, the reason that Health Australia Party exists, from speaking with the co-founder, Dr. Isaac Golden, is to represent the holistic and the allied health and people that had previously or until now struggled to have a voice. They're doing great things for the community. I love going to see my chiropractor. I love going to see a naturopath. I love going to see. Why should those people be disadvantaged by a system that doesn't understand them? And perhaps that's all it really comes down to. It's just that their message, their voice hasn't been heard and they haven't been understood. And so they've been taken off things like the extras on your private health insurance. You know, that's a shame because they do a great thing for the community. I love going to see an acupuncturist. I love the choice of going to see a person that holistically looks at me.
Yeah, and that's the really important word, I think, Bass, is that it's choice.
Yeah.
You know, we all have that right to have choice of how we look after ourselves and our environment.
So perhaps that's one of the big things for me is pro-life and pro-choice. Taking people's choice away from them, and especially when it comes to their health and their body, that to me is another definition for slavery. I mean, is that a modern day slavery? Like if you don't have autonomy, you don't have control, and you don't have choice over your own health and your own body and what people can and cannot do with it, then what control do you have in your life?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
They're the things that people need to really start getting passionate about. They're the things that people that get fired up about their football teams winning or losing need to start getting fired up about. Because our society and our country and our freedoms need to be, within reason, balanced. And currently, the balance is going out the window. And if this isn't the time to stand up and be heard and make noise about your freedom and about your health and about your family's health, then when is? And so
Couldn't
I
agree more.
encourage, yeah, I encourage other people, leaders, and they don't have to be leaders in politics or leaders in the field of natural medicine or any of that sort of stuff, just leaders in their own household, leaders in their own right, to stand up, to look at Health Australia Party, they become a candidate, come run with me. I will put you ahead of me. I'll vote for you. My aim here is not to try and do this for me. This is for Health Australia Party. This is for what good we can do, what influence we can have for our community.
Yeah,
You know,
something for the people, so that we get our choices back and have our rights reinstated, because they have definitely been eroded, and it is time. It's time to stand up and stand up for ourselves and take back our freedoms.
It has to be the way. And you know, the key is, I think, what shapes these freedoms, and this is again largely one of the reasons why I've gotten involved with Health Australia Party, is politics. And the biggest surprise that I've had is a lot of people don't understand politics. A lot of people don't understand voting. A lot of people don't understand the difference between an upper house and a lower house, the difference between the big paper and the small paper when they go to elections. You know, and they need to understand that. They need to make their votes count. That's a civil duty. That's you know, their right to choice is to elect a fair party and elect somebody that's going to represent the majority's voice and fairness and balance. And if they don't do that, then why are they expecting a change? And I think this is the biggest thing in society at this time, is everybody's going, poor little me, there's not much I can do. Somebody else is going to come and do it, potentially looking for a savior or looking for, you need to be your own savior. You need to get up, make that decision. You need to get fired up about what counts and what matters. And if your choice doesn't count and it doesn't matter to you, think about your children, think about your future, think about their future, think about, you know, where will we go with as a society, as a country, if those things aren't accounted for and heard and acted on now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't feel that they make a difference, but every single person makes a difference. Every voice counts. And there's not one person on the planet that's any more important than anyone else. Yeah. From Queen of England to the person who sweeps the streets. Totally. We're all important, we're all equal, and we all count.
Totally agree. And that's the truth. And the more people start to get aware and conscious of that, the better. Because if you think about it, the entire collective of society is made up of individuals. And if each of those individuals started to make their choices count, then we have an entire society that makes their choices count. But if every individual in that society said, well, it's not up to me, it's up to somebody else to shape our future, to shape our, then we have an entire collective of society that have lost care. They're more passionate about what beer brand they drink and which team they follow and what colors they support than their entire, you know, freedom.
Yeah.
And that is how freedom gets eroded. People becoming complacent and careless. And we need to change that. Each individual, every person needs to be accountable for their choices.
Absolutely. And certainly I believe that's where Health Australia Party comes in, because we will stand for the people, really for the people.
And that's what matters. And we need that. We definitely don't need any more political hacks, political institutionalized people that will use the system to their advantage and get away with it. People that know how to bend the rules just enough for them to not get into trouble. We need people that are real people that will get up and that will do the right thing. And if they make a mistake, they'll say we've made a mistake and own it. And whether that then keeps them in that seat or gets them fired or whatever, doesn't matter. But as long as they're honest. And I remember there was a time where that was actually happening, at least in my lifetime. I've seen it once. I lived in Victoria for some time, and I remember there was the premiere of Victoria after Jeff was Steve Bracks, and he decent. I think he was a real person, not a career politician. And something happened. I can't exactly remember what it was because I was still quite young, but I remember that maybe his son got in trouble or something happened. He said, you know what, I'm going to put my family first and I'm going to step down.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
And to me, I think it's the only real political person that I remember had some realness about him. Since then, we've seen parties that backstab each other. And I'm not saying this to make anybody else look bad. I'm just pointing out my observation and why voting for me was always difficult. Who's the lesser evil? Parties that backstabbed each other, people that got elected. We elected a certain prime minister, a certain that the majority voted for at least, and his own party removed him and ad hoc put somebody else. And we've seen that from both sides, the red and blue.
Yep.
And I think we're at a time right now where the current prime minister is the first that's been elected that hasn't been kind of pushed under a bus by his own party, so to speak, for a while.
As yet.
As yet. So yeah, that's yet to be determined. But for now, he's like holding a record. And that to me is a sad state of affairs. And you know, we were before the toilet paper, that was what Australia was known for. So we had a political circus going on where, you know, it's like, who's your current prime minister? I don't know. Is he still in power or is she still in power at some point? And then the toilet paper incident happened, and we had every man and his dog around the world laughing at Australia for being hoarders of toilet paper. And so this comes back to those choices that as individuals we need to make with the care and thoughtfulness of knowing that it affects the entire collective society, community, if you like, of Australia. So if people think about that with the mindfulness and with the level of respect that it deserves, they'll make different choices. They'll make better choices potentially. Or at the very least, if they make poor choices, they'll have the backbone and the decency to get up and say, I've made a poor decision. And I'm here to admit that, you know.
The colour of the new politician.
That's
honest,
right.
open, transparent. Yeah.
I like
human.
That
human.
Yeah, real, you know.
Real, yeah.
And we've seen that with another colour, funny enough, and I was going to hold this one and bite my tongue, but even the Greens, who I used to think at some point represented the nature and looking after the environment, I'm not going to diss them, but I'm just going to say their leadership decisions and their preferencing. And I think people should be asking the question, are we voting for the Greens when we vote for the Greens, or are we voting for Labor?
Yeah.
And it's just an observation. I'm not saying that to beat anybody up. I'm just asking this question because at some point when I didn't know who to vote for, I looked at Greens for a while, you know, and now I know that when I started to give my votes to the minority parties, it was because the Greens didn't look like a minority party. Even before they made those preferencing decisions, something felt like there was a shift. There was some sort of maybe a handshake or some sort of deal that was happening that perhaps we didn't all know about. I don't know. That's the thing. We need more minority parties because minority parties in Parliament help balance out decisions and fairness.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, and represent people's voices. If we don't have that, then the whole landscape's going to look very different. Who's going to challenge when those policies come through? Who's going to question why are we making this particular change? Why are we passing another law? Don't we have enough laws?
Yes, yeah, we need balance, which we don't have.
We need balance, and we need people to start to care and understand about politics because it is at a large level shaping our country and shaping our rules. Our health, as we know it, is determined by some of these policies.
Absolutely. Our whole life is.
Our whole life, our economy, and many, many, many more aspects of our life are determined by these policies. And at some point, I have to say it with truth and hand on heart, I didn't care much for politics. like I said earlier, I didn't know enough about it.
Yeah.
And not enough people do. It was never really explained well enough. And the subject is so dry when you start to do the research on politics
Mm.
and the territories and the voting and the electoral and the ballot paper and all the different rules and the policies and the things. It is really, really quite dry. And I guess that's why not enough people take enough interest in politics for them to want to make a difference or a change. But finally, we have people like Health Australia Party going, you know what? We need to make some changes. Let's make this a level playing field. We are a minority party, and I'd love to see us get some seats in the next state elections. Um, so let's see. I mean, at the end of the day, that's going to be determined by voters.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, it's for me, it's very heartwarming to have someone like you on board who has the same aims, certainly, that I do. And I think most of us involved in Health Australia Party feel exactly as you do. We want honesty and truth and transparency and real people at the helm.
I'll tell you, Molly, you know what makes us similar is our values. You know, I've always valued my family, and family for me always comes first. Maybe that's what I liked about Steve Bracks, because what he did, he spoke his truth and he said that his family mattered more than that job, and that's why he stepped down. And what you are doing, and what pretty much everybody in Health Australia Party is doing, is they're looking at their values, and we're sensing into Health Australia Party's values. And if it aligns, it draws you. If it doesn't align, it won't draw you. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that, you're a good or a bad person. It just means your values. If you value your future, if you value your family's future, if you value health, if you value the freedoms that you have, if you value the freedoms that you had yesterday, if you had the freedoms that you had in 2019, 2018, if you value those, you don't know what's going to happen in 21 or 22 or 23. What's come up in 2020 was a big enough surprise. Don't be naive to think that we're not going to have things like this happen again and again. And when those things happen, will you still value your freedoms? Would you have wished that you'd made a choice and taken a more active approach in life rather than reactive or passive to influence decisions through your votes or through your support or through your membership? It's free to join, I think, at the Health Australia Party for the moment. I could be stand corrected. I'm sure if Dr. Isaac Golden was with us on this call, he'd be correcting me a few times. I love that. But I think it's free to join, at least as a member online. It doesn't cost anything. Join, become a member, get to know the policy. Check out healthaustralia.com.au. Look at what we stand for. The Constitution's on there. Look at the people that are on there and their backgrounds. These are the things that's all it takes to take an active role, is to actually look at what the party stands for, versus going, oh, my grandmother and my great grandfather and the people before them voted for blue, so I'm going to go blue. And oh, no, but my auntie goes for red and I don't like her, so I'm not going to go for red, and all that sort of stuff. Forget those loyalties, because the loyalties that those grandparents had for those parties, they'd be changing those loyalties themselves right now if they'd seen some of the things that have gone on. Parties throwing their leadership under the bus. That didn't happen in your grandparents and your great-grandparents' lifetime. So if you look at those things, I'm all about loyalty. I'm very loyal to loyalty, but I'm not loyal to stupidity. I'm not loyal to being naive. I was naive yesterday. Today, I've learned from that naivety and I make changes. So you can choose. You can choose to be loyal, or and the greatest thing about loyal is stubbornness. Or you can choose to be stubbornly educated and informed and start looking at what other parties are presenting. Look at other minority parties, not just the Health Australia Party, and look at what they represent. If they represent something that you feel strongly towards, give them your vote, give them your membership, give them your support. If we represent something that makes you happy and feel like, well, this could be right, but they're a minority party, what can they do? We need your support. We need more people to give support for us to be able to do something. Otherwise, we'll be the greatest thing that you never supported. So, you know, that's what made me make a decision. And again, I don't see myself as a politician. I don't like politics, but it's a necessary thing. Yeah, you can't say that about accounting, for example, and have a business. You got to say, well, I don't like accounting, but I'm going to hire a fantastic accountant, and I'm going to support him and understand things from him, because otherwise my business won't survive. You know what I mean? I don't like
exactly
taxation, but okay, as a business owner, I've got to learn about it. I've got to understand it. I've got to abide by the rules of the taxation department. I've got to respect that. And if I don't understand it, I've got to have a good accountant that can explain it to me. And there's lots of things like that in life. You can't just say, I don't understand politics, so I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't think that cuts it anymore, not after 2020.
No, it's certainly a different world now that we have right now and that we're moving into, and we do all need to stand up and join the little parties. It does cost you to join Health Australia. If you want to be a full member, it's $25 a year, but we do have the availability of free membership if you're struggling and you can't afford to join, and we understand that, particularly in these times with so many people losing their jobs. But and you know, as a small party, we need support financially so that we can do talks and get to people and you know, get our word out there so that everyone knows what we're all about as well. But it is time for people to stand up. We can no longer sit back and say, she'll be right, mate, because across the globe, she ain't right, mate. And there's
right.
change occurring, really serious change that we all need to be aware of and to stand up against if you don't like it, or if you like it, that's fine, but that's your choice. And we need to be able to make that choice. And that's what Health Australia Party is all about.
Yeah, totally agree. And Molly, on Monday here in Perth, Western Australia, there is an event that Health Australia Party is doing. I think Emily may have been, our Secretary of State, has shared the flyer on the WA Health Australia Party. But yeah, I think that's a great thing to get to, live events that Health Australia Party does. And, you know, they're very educational, they're very informative. We get some great speakers. I think she's got a microbiologist talking about some different topics about virus and about how virus travels and how virus lives and all that sorts of stuff. That's going to be a technical talk, a bit over my head, but you know, I'm interested.
Good to know the truth of how these viruses really do work, isn't it?
Definitely. And so, yeah, we often get really great speakers that come in and talk about some really interesting topics that do keep our community informed. And that's what it's all about. I think raising more awareness, educating and informing people so that people can make informed decisions. That's the key.
That's the key. Yes, you're quite right. Well, on that note, on the informed decisions, Bass, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me tonight, and congratulations and welcome to our team. And I look forward very much to working with you in the future and let's hope we can do some really great work together and get you elected in WA in March next year.
Thank you, Molly. I'm very confident that we will do some great things. I appreciate that. Thank you for the great surprise and this announcement today.
Oh, that's my great pleasure. Thank you, Bass. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'm very excited to have Bass on board and to be getting some really good work done in WA. They do have a very strong team there in the state branch, and call out to all you West Australians, please support them and let's really make a difference with the Health Australia Party. Good night from us.